The last light of evening slid gently through the trees, painting the forest in quiet gold. Along a narrow animal path, a young deer moved slowly, each step more unsteady than the last. Her ribs showed faintly beneath her thin coat, her breathing short and uneven. For hours, she had wandered in search of water, pushed far from her herd by the growing dryness of the land. Now her legs trembled with each step, her head dipping lower as fatigue crept through her body like a tide. The forest seemed to sense her weakness. Birds fell silent in the branches above, their songs replaced by the slow hum of crickets and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. The scent of dry earth and pine lingered in the air, mingling with the faint metallic trace of exhaustion and fear. She reached a shallow stream at last, a thin ribbon of silver winding through the undergrowth, and bent her head to drink. But her knees gave way before she could lower herself, and she crumpled beside the water's edge. Her chest rose and fell in short, shallow bursts. Mud clung to her side where she had fallen, darkening her pale fur. For a long moment she didn't move at all. Only the small ripples spreading from her hoof showed that she was still alive. A faint sound escaped her throat, not a cry but something quieter, a breath caught between effort and surrender. The forest, vast and indifferent, listened. Insects began to settle near her legs, sensing stillness. A breeze stirred through the trees, carrying the scent of her body down the slope, across the hollow where shadows gathered early. Somewhere in that distance, a pair of eyes caught the fading light, steady, amber, and waiting. The young deer did not see them. She only lifted her head once, then let it rest against the ground, the soft grass pressing against her muzzle. Her body twitched occasionally, driven by the instinct to rise, to flee, to rejoin the living rhythm of her kind. But her strength was gone. The world around her slowed to a gentle pulse. The stream whispering beside her, the first stars appearing above the canopy. Minutes passed. The sound of the forest shifted as night drew closer. Far away, an owl called once. Its echo carried through the valleys. The deer's sides moved faintly, her breaths becoming slower, spaced between long pauses. Her ears flicked toward every small sound, but her eyes no longer tracked the movement. She was caught in the stillness between life's persistence and nature's quiet claim. A human observer, had there been one, might have thought she was simply resting, that she would stand when the night cooled. But the forest knew better. This was the kind of stillness that drew others near. Scavengers, opportunists, or those whose survival depended on moments like this. The scent of weakness spread with the wind, and somewhere, not far away, dry leaves shifted beneath padded feet. The deer's ear twitched once more, faintly catching the rhythm of steps approaching through the undergrowth. Her body shivered, trying to rise, but her legs only scraped against the soil. She lowered herself again, her sides trembling with effort. The sky dimmed to blue-gray. The stream continued its quiet murmur beside her, weaving its way through roots and fallen leaves. And as the last traces of sunlight slipped from the treetops, the young deer lay completely still, her breath soft and uneven. All around her, the forest waited, holding its silence as if in respect for whatever would come next. From beyond the tree line, a gray shape lingered in the half-light. The wolf had been moving silently through the valley, following the scent of water and faint traces of deer that the dry season had left scattered across the hills. Hunger pressed against his ribs, and each step came with the ache of long searching. His coat, once thick and silver, hung loosely around his frame. Yet his eyes stayed alert, pale amber, catching the last remnants of light that filtered through the thinning canopy. He slowed as a faint sound reached him, not the usual rhythm of movement, but something uneven. A shallow breath, drawn and broken, somewhere near the stream ahead. He paused, lifting his head slightly. The air carried the scent of weakness. His nostrils flared once, then again. There it was, the unmistakable trace of deer, close enough that even the breeze could not hide it. Instinct urged him forward. His paws sank softly into the leaf litter, each movement measured, practiced, silent. Through the ferns he caught sight of her, The young deer lay near the edge of the stream, her body curled awkwardly, sides rising with effort. She did not see him. The water beside her reflected the faint shimmer of the sky, turning her still form into a pale outline against the earth. For a long moment he simply watched. Hunger whispered to him a dull memory of survival. Yet something in the scene kept him still. Not confusion, but recognition of a fragility that felt out of place in the heart of the forest. The wolf lowered himself slightly, body pressed close to the ground, tail still. His ears shifted forward, listening to every small sound, the trembling breath, the slight flutter of insects, the quiet pulse of running water. Each detail spoke not of strength, but of fading life. He took another step, then another, his shadow stretching closer across the stones. The deer stirred faintly, her ear twitching. She did not rise. A faint sound escaped her throat, a soft and tired exhale, more air than voice. The wolf stopped just short of the clearing. For a moment, the air between them felt suspended, predator and prey divided only by stillness. He could have ended the distance in a single bound, but he didn't move. His head tilted slightly, curiosity threading through instinct. Her body was already too weak to flee. Even the smallest motion of her neck seemed to drain what little strength remained. He watched as her chest lifted once, then fell slowly, the movement fragile, almost rhythmic. He turned his gaze away briefly, scanning the trees around them. The forest had gone quiet again, as if observing. This was the quiet hour before night truly claimed the land, when decisions in the wild often carried weight beyond survival. The wolf stepped closer, the sound of his paws muffled by the damp soil. He sniffed the air once more, then lowered his head. The scent of fear was faint now, replaced by the raw simplicity of exhaustion. For reasons that belonged only to the rhythm of the wild, he didn't strike. Instead, he circled slowly, his body tracing a cautious path near her side, his eyes never leaving her form. When he settled, it was a few feet away, close enough to watch, far enough not to threaten. He lay down, paws stretched forward, his breathing steady and low. The deer's ear flicked again, but she did not move. The forest exhaled softly. Between hunger and mercy, something fragile took root. Not peace, but a shared moment of endurance beneath the quiet stars. Night settled gently across the forest, spreading its shadow through the branches and over the quiet ground. The last traces of color faded from the sky, leaving only a pale reflection in the stream beside them. The wolf remained still where he had laid himself down, his body half hidden in the tall grass. His breathing was steady now, a rhythm that matched the pulse of the forest around him. Across the small clearing, the young deer had not moved. Her body rested awkwardly, her neck stretched toward the water as if reaching for what her strength could no longer reach. The wolf rose again, silent, his movements slow and measured. Hunger still lingered in his bones, the ache of many empty days, yet he hesitated. His steps were cautious as he approached her, his paws barely disturbing the soft earth. Each breath he took carried the scent of her, faint, fading, laced with exhaustion. He lowered his head, sniffing at the air that hung heavy between them. Her eyes were half open, clouded by weakness, but they flickered once when he drew near. She was aware of him, if only faintly. Her ear twitched, her flank lifted weakly in response to his presence. It was not fear anymore, only recognition. The wolf stopped then, his head tilted slightly, his gaze fixed upon her fragile stillness. The faint moonlight brushed across them both. Predator and prey locked in a moment that defied the instincts that shaped their world. The forest had grown quiet again. Even the crickets paused, as though sound itself might disturb whatever thin thread of life still connected the two. The wolf's nostrils flared once more, then relaxed. He circled her slowly, his tail low, his steps unhurried. Each pass was careful, deliberate, as though searching for something unseen. His shadow passed over her again and again, never touching. When he finally stopped, he lowered himself into the grass only a few feet away. His head rested between his paws, his eyes fixed on the deer. The faint movement of her chest rose and fell within the narrow frame of his vision. Around them, the night deepened, the kind of darkness that swallowed distance and sound alike. A breeze carried the scent of pine and cool water, brushing gently through the fur along his neck. The wolf's ears twitched at every faint rustle in the distance, the cautious steps of smaller animals, the flutter of wings, the creak of branches high above. To any of them he was a hunter lying in wait, but for now he made no move. Something in the stillness held him there, quiet and unmoving, as if instinct itself had softened under the weight of the night. The deer stirred once, a faint kick of her hind leg against the soil. A soft grunt escaped her, weak but alive. The sound drew the wolf's gaze sharply, but he did not rise. He only watched, eyes steady, as she struggled to shift her head slightly toward him. There was no strength in her movement, only the fragile persistence of life refusing to fade entirely. The moon climbed higher. Its light found the shallow water and turned it to glass. A moth drifted between them, wings pale against the darkness. The wolf blinked once, slow and calm. He lifted his head, scanning the shadows beyond, alert to the unseen presence of others, fox, owl, scavenger, things that followed the scent of endings. But none came closer, so he stayed. Not as hunter, not as savior, but as something in between. A keeper of this small silence in the wild. Morning arrived slowly, seeping into the forest like breath through the trees. The sky brightened in soft gradients, a faint mist clinging to the low grass where the cold of night had lingered. Beneath the tall pines, the wolf lifted his head. His fur, damp from dew, glistened faintly in the pale light. The long stillness of night had left him stiff, but his eyes were alert, drawn back toward the motionless figure near the stream. The young deer still lay where she had fallen, her flank pressed to the earth, her sides moving with fragile rhythm. But there was life again in her movement. Her ears twitched, first one then the other, as the forest began to wake around her. A wren called somewhere above, and the distant rustle of small creatures signaled the return of morning activity. She did not rise, yet the faint motion of her limbs spoke of a slow return to awareness. The wolf stood carefully, his legs unfolding with quiet grace. He stretched once, shaking the stiffness from his muscles, and sniffed the cool air. Hunger still lived in him, steady, patient, relentless, but it came now with a strange calm. His gaze returned to the deer. She blinked, her eyes clearer than before. A thin layer of frost had melted from the grass beside her, leaving small beads of water that shimmered like tiny mirrors. For a few moments, neither moved. The wolf's breath hung in faint clouds before him. The deer's ears remained fixed on his sound. There was no panic between them anymore, only the cautious stillness of two beings that had shared a long night in the same fragile space. A pair of crows circled above the clearing, black silhouettes against the brightening sky. They landed on a branch nearby, calling softly, then hesitated. The wolf's low presence was enough to keep them at distance. He turned his head slightly toward them, his gaze sharp but silent. They fluttered away, settling farther down the stream. Then he looked back at the deer. She tried to lift her head, but it fell again, too heavy still. Her chest rose with effort. A soft grunt escaped her, faint but real, a small sound of persistence. The wolf stepped closer, his body language calm, cautious but without threat. The space between them narrowed to only a few strides. The forest light deepened. The mist began to lift in swirling patches, catching the warmth of dawn. Every small detail seemed suspended, droplets hanging from pine needles, the steady trickle of water through stones, the breath of the two animals weaving in quiet rhythm. The wolf stopped within a few feet of her and lowered himself again, lying on his belly with his front paws stretched before him. He did not take his eyes off her, but there was no hunger left in that gaze, only watchfulness, something older than thought. Minutes passed, uncounted. The deer's breathing steadied. Slowly, with visible effort, she lifted her head again. Her neck trembled, but this time she managed to hold it. The movement revealed the delicate shape of her jawline, her nostrils flaring as she drew in the scent of pine and earth, and of the wolf so close by. Their eyes met briefly, an unspoken recognition crossing the fragile space between them. Neither moved away. The wind passed softly through the clearing, carrying with it the faint scent of sunlight and wet grass. The forest stirred to full life now, distant calls, wings, footsteps. Yet in that small pocket of quiet, time seemed to slow. The wolf blinked once, slow and calm, then lowered his head again, resting against the ground. The deer exhaled weakly, her head dipping once more. Between them, the silence of dawn felt almost like mercy. The sun climbed gently above the ridge, its first rays spilling through the tall pines and touching the damp earth below. Mist drifted low across the ground, parting slowly as warmth replaced the cold breath of dawn. The wolf stirred first. He lifted his head, his fur glistening faintly where dew had gathered during the night. His eyes, pale and clear, blinked toward the young deer still lying near the stream. She hadn't moved for some time, yet something in the morning air carried a new rhythm, the faint pulse of renewal. Her body trembled once, then again. Muscles that had stiffened through the long night began to respond to the warmth sinking into the soil. Her ears flicked toward the calls of birds high above, sounds she had not heard clearly since before she fell. The stream whispered beside her, soft and steady, and for the first time in many hours, her breathing deepened. The wolf rose slowly, shaking out his legs, the sound of his movement barely breaking the morning's hush. He stood watching, still as stone, as she gathered the fragile will to move. The deer's front leg shifted first, pressing weakly into the earth. Her hooves slipped once, catching on the wet grass, but she tried again. Her body quivered under its own weight, each muscle trembling with effort. The wolf took a step forward, then stopped. His tail lowered. His ears tilted slightly back, not in fear, but in quiet restraint. His gaze held steady on her, cautious yet unthreatening. The air between them was fragile, like the surface of the water at their feet. The deer's head lifted at last. Her eyes, dulled by exhaustion, caught the glint of sunlight filtering through the leaves. She blinked, and in that small motion the long night seemed to end. With a final effort, she pushed upward, her legs shaking beneath her. For a moment, she stood unevenly, her body swaying as though the forest itself were holding its breath. Then slowly she found her balance. The wolf did not move closer. He only watched, the curve of his body still and patient. Hunger still lay somewhere inside him, quiet but alive, yet it did not guide him now. His head tilted slightly, the faint rise and fall of his chest the only movement that broke his outline. The deer turned toward the forest's open edge. Her nostrils flared, testing the wind, her body alert to every sound and scent. There was fear in her stance, but not panic, only instinct returning, the pulse of life remembering what to do. She took a single step. The grass bent under her weight, wet blades glistening against her legs. Then another step followed. Each motion carried uncertainty, but also something stronger, the steady rhythm of survival. She hesitated once, turning her head slightly, her dark eyes meeting the wolf's. The moment stretched in stillness, unspoken and ancient. No sound passed between them, yet something shifted, a balance older than either life. The wolf blinked, his expression unreadable, and lowered his head. He turned away from the stream and began to walk toward the darker slope of the ridge, his paws silent against the forest floor. The deer watched him go until his shape blended with shadow and distance. When he was gone, she looked once more toward the light and took another careful step forward, following the faint path her herd might have once crossed. Sunlight reached the clearing fully now, spreading gold across the moss and bark. The water shimmered, carrying fragments of fallen leaves downstream. A soft wind stirred the grass and the forest moved again, alive and whole. For a moment, the clearing stood as it had before, empty, quiet, untouched, yet marked by something unseen, the trace of a choice that belonged only to the wild.